Today, we will see how to create this DNA strand visual using spline 3D elements with the Thick Lines renderer. To begin with, we will create a helix. We ensure that the renderer is of the Thick Lines type, which is the default renderer for 3D objects of type spline. Then, in the generator, we will change the radius so that there is a constant radius of 0.15 meters throughout the entire length, and only 2 turns between the top and the bottom. Next, I will create a modifier of type operator, repeat, with only 2 repetitions for the 2 helixes that will allow to create this DNA strand shape. I will add a 180-degree rotation between the 2. Now we will want to create the small bars that will connect these 2 helixes to form the DNA shape. To do this, I will simply create a segment that will start at -0.14 and end at 0.14 so that it connects the 2 helixes. I will place it at the very bottom of the helixes at -1 meter. I will also add a repeat modifier with 20 repetitions, and I will place them up to the top of my helixes. Now I want these repetitions to follow the same twist as my helixes, so I will add a rotation until I achieve the same twist. Now we will create a camera to choose the viewpoint. I click on this icon to make it the current viewpoint of the composition. It looks pretty good here. We can change the line thickness to 50 pixels for the helixes and 30 pixels for the segments. Now we want to create an animation to rotate this DNA strand. So for that, we will group the helixes and the segments by either right-clicking and group or Ctrl plus Shift plus G. I'm going to rename this group DNA, and I can create a linear loop that we will slow down over 15 seconds or even 20 seconds. To make the visual a little more interesting, we can start by adding a background. So here, I'm going to look in the standard pack for the background called lens flare. I'm going to place it behind my DNA, and since the image is a bit smaller, I will right-click and in placement I will select Fit Outside. At the moment, this image is a bit too sharp, so I'm going to add a blur modifier, quite strong, to simply have a halo effect like this. I can also change the texture of the helixes. We'll take, for example, a linear gradient to create this impression of depth, and I will choose a color that blends well with the background, so a light blue. We will apply the same texture to the segment by holding Alt and drag and dropping the texture. Now we will want to apply a feedback effect on the DNA, but we don't want it to affect the background image, so we will create a compo for the group. Make compo. And we will place the feedback modifier on this compo. So now we see there is a slight feedback effect when the helixes move, which I will reduce to 70%. To make the visual even more interesting, we can add an effect as if there were tiny particles floating around this strand of DNA. For this, I will create a new compo in which I will create a grid of points. We can pause the animation while working on the grid of points, and I will rename this compo Particles. We will give the grid of points a size of 2 meters so that it covers the entire helices, and we'll reduce the precision to 5, so there is a more reasonable number of particles. For now, the arrangement of the particles is very regular, so not very natural. So we'll add a modifier position noise so that their position is a little more random, and we will adjust the size of the noise until we are happy with the layout. The particles are way too large at the moment, so we will add a modifier point scale function with sizes ranging from 0 to 0.25. We can also add a modifier colorize with a color uniform light blue. We will rotate this grid of points at the same speed as the DNA strand. So I will create a linear loop, which I will also set to 20 seconds. We can also add a little blur modifier of 20 pixels and lower the opacity of the compo to make the particles more subtle. Finally, we can add a blur to the entire compo, quite strong, and we will apply a circle mask, inverted, and increase its size to blur only the corners, and we will add a lot of feather to smooth the effect.